Hello viewers, I hope you are doing well. It has been long since we last had our last video, and in case you've not yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, the name is Learn English Language and Literature, that is LELL, and in here you'll be able to see all the videos we have been interacting with on across as the novel is concerned. Previously we have looked at corruption, exploitation as the themes in Devil on the Cross, and today we're going to look at neocolonialism and also the theme of elitism. In the next episode of the video, we're going to be looking at resistance, revolution, and national liberation versus capitalism. Then from there, we shall be looking at other themes like greed and materialism, poverty and suffering, disillusionment, and others. For today, this is what we're going to be looking at, the theme of neocolonialism and another theme that is elitism. These are some of the themes that really sound so loud as far as Devil on the Cross is concerned. What exactly do we mean by neocolonialism? Now, it is very important for us to first begin by understanding what neocolonialism means. I've interacted with a number of learners who want to first understand what we mean by neocolonialism. And some of them actually think colonialism is the same as neocolonialism. No, they're actually different. I'm going to take Professor Sandra Halperin's definition of what we mean by neocolonialism. Well, it means it is just simply the control of less developed countries by developed countries through indirect means. And some people historically have said it is the way developed countries come into influence with the developing countries. But I think this one summarizes it much better, that it is the control of the less developed countries by the developed countries through indirect means. That is using the leaders of the same small or developed, low developed countries or developing countries. But it can also mean generally to say that it is a situation where developed countries would want to come back through using different processes of the strategies, particularly of the colonialists, to influence the business, the political, and other aspects of a developing country. That could be neocolonialism, in a way that you see the aspects of colonialism, but the country has actually got rid of the colonialists. But then whatever they are using today is more of the colonialists, meaning that actually the people that were colonizing that country formerly could be colonizing it, but indirectly. That would be now neo. But now we can also say that neocolonialism also refers to a form of global power in which transnational corporations, and this could be corporations like the business corporations, for example, MTN, Airtel, or Red, and other telecommunication companies, plus other big companies, and other multilateral institutions, combine the power to come and in forms of exploitation and in forms of colonial powers impact on the countries, especially developing ones. That would be neocolonialism. So in brief, a situation where the country seems to be independent, but then it has a lot of aspects that control its economy, that control its politics, and other important sectors of that country would be regarded as a country which is going through neocolonialism. Now, when we begin with the description, neocolonialism, right at the beginning of the novel, we can really be easily telling people that we are discussing with about our reading of Devil on the Cross that this book actually communicates neocolonialism. When, for example, Waringa is rescued from the suicide that she chooses as the best option, she is led to the veranda of Kaka Saloon. That is at the beginning of the book. This is the pace that she has to come into recount of her dream that she had always had while she's still at school, in the secondary school. The description in that dream of the devil is clearly symbolic to the whites, and I want us to briefly look at that. This is what it says. The devil had two mouths, and one on his forehead and the other at the back of his head. His belly sagged. Now, when you look at the devil having two mouths, you can see that already this one is a depiction of not simply a satanic figure of someone or some kind of a figure having a mouth in front and a mouth behind. When we're looking at neocolonialism, actually these people, the time they are here, they are colonizing Africans as colonialists. But the fact that this time around that is now the front mouth, the fact that now they're having a mouth at the back would simply mean that even when the front mouth is closed, still the mouth at the back can continue sucking into the affairs of the formerly colonized countries. And therefore, if this dream is describing a devil in this way, you can simply say that these are actually colonialists in any way that the author is trying to refer to. Then she goes on to say that his belly sagged as if it were about to give birth to all the devils, to all the evils of the world. His skin was red like that of a pig. So when you try to compare the description in here and that of the whites, you can really conclude that the people that had colonized Kenya formerly, because we have already looked at the setting, somehow we realize that this is actually describing the whites that had colonized Kenya formerly. But the aspect of having two mouths would be communicating the fact that even when they go away, the mouth at the back will still be sucking into Kenya's affairs. Now, after 3 days, this again continues to explain more about how the whole matter comes in. The people that crucified the devil are actually the masses, the peasants, the workers. During Harambee time, these are the people that collectively fight to send away the whites, the colonialists. However, we see that in the dream, the second group of the people, this time around, are actually in silk suits, symbolically the rich who put the devil off the cross and worship him with all kinds of praises. They fight to bring back the imperialists for the benefits as we see all these guys, especially in the later parts of the novel, in the cave. Now, this is how it actually goes. After 3 days, there came others dressed in suits and ties, who, keeping close to the wall of the darkness, lifted the devil down from the cross, and they knelt before him and they prayed to him in loud voices, beseeching him to give them a portion of his robes of cunning. And their bellies immediately began to swell, and they stood up and they walked towards Waringa, laughing at her, stroking their large bellies, which had now inherited all the evils of this world. Now, well, this is an irony, and when we begin discussing the narrative techniques in this book, we shall be looking at this very part. We'll come back to see that we analyze it. But when we try to look at it in detail, we see that these are the people that have sent away the whites, the peasants, and then the rich people. That's why we say that neocolonialism will always include people conniving with the powers outside to either influence the economy of the country economically or politically or in any other form. It can even be socially. Now, these people during Harambee have worked hard to send away the devil, but you can see that the rich people who are holding the business, the economy of Kenya, would have to bring back the devil by lifting him off the cross, lifting back the white, bring him back and worship him, asking him to teach them how they should also be exploiting their own people, or generally exploiting every person in the country. This is actually the beginning of neocolonialism, that the black people, peasants, have put off the white, and then the rich people bring him back through economy or through money or through business. Well, That is what the black people decided to do, that they have to fall apart. One group coming in to put off the whites, sending them back to their countries, and that is now during the Harambee time, people gaining independence, and then another group, especially that is of the rich, coming in to instead lift the whites back and bring them back, worship them, ask them to give them wisdom and others. That is symbolically what it means. Well, we shall be looking at more of this when we are looking at narrative techniques, and we shall be bringing that irony and the symbolism in there. We shall continue and see any other aspect of neocolonialism. When Wangari finds an African man in the shop in Nairobi when she's looking for a job, we see that her heart is lifted with hope. Well, we as readers know that Wangari actually has lost almost everything in her home, and she has now decided to say, let me look for a job in the city like Nairobi. I don't think it is very hard for me to find one. But then when she finds that job, as readers, we celebrate with her. We think actually this is a black man, and we expect the job is going to be found in this shop. After roaming around the whole street, and she's not able to see any black man in that shop. That is actually also another aspect of neocolonialism. You cannot wonder why we don't find a black man in any shop in Nairobi, the streets of Nairobi, but only whites everywhere Wangari goes. This is also a very big irony, but we can't discuss irony right now. Shall be looking at that in the later versions of the analysis. But the fact that we have whites in the shops, in the big shops of the country, and particularly of the city like Nairobi, is enough to explain the aspect of neocolonialism, meaning that the whites have not actually gone away. If they have gone, they have only left the political powers in the hands of the blacks, but then leaving business in their own hands, like we see Wangari moving along the streets of Nairobi, and she only sees in every big shop there is an Indian, there is a white. It is enough to explain that the whites have not actually gone away at all. Now, what is very puzzling is that when she meets this black man, we all hope that we have found light. Finally, she's going to get a job. She expects to get this job because he's an African, he's a brother, and she is a sister to him in one way or the other. They are both black. It is their Kenya in any case. This is the Kenya now they have claimed from the whites because they participate in the Harambee to make sure that they claim this very Kenya. However, because this man's brain has been brainwashed by the whites, he offers Wangari in the hands of his white boss and the police and the court thereafter. Now, you can see that beyond the whites owning the businesses, they are also owning the younger people. We expect that this young person should instead offer to help Wangari in one way or the other. But actually, he is worse than the white who tells them we don't have jobs here, but the only job that all the people can do is to spread legs, advising Wangari to take to prostitution. This one is worse because he hands her over to the police after handing her over to his white boss. He is worshipping the white man in one way or the other. That's another one that can explain properly neocolonialism. Well, more so we can also talk about Ngugi's presentation of particularly the haves and the have-nots. The haves are these guys that are already equipped financially, and then the have-nots are particularly the peasants and the poor. Ngugi presents the class or the classes between the haves and the have-nots, and shows how the collision is very important. This collision mirrors that which even existed between the colonizer and the colonized. In other words, Ngugi is telling us that the post-independence Kenya came socially and economically as that during colonialism. Is telling us that there is no difference between the Kenya today in Devon Across and the Kenya before Devon Across. It's telling us that the same things that happened during the time of colonialists is the same that is happening today. The have-nots and they do not have are the same. The divisions are there. According to Ngugi, this is understandable in the sense that the Kenyan bourgeoisies, the Kenya's rich people, are manufactured by the British and nothing else. And they form a social elite group of an African category. An African in blood and color, but very European in ideas, in strategies, in opinions, in living style, in taste, and in thought. In each and every activity, it is totally Africa. Which is simply emphasizing that the people in Kenya today, the people in Kenya in Devon across are simply the same as the people in Kenya during colonialism. Now, their way of life comes from the training in the tradition of Western capitalism particularly, looking at money, putting more emphasis on money, capital, rather than socialism. They look at exploiting the people in terms of money, and they wouldn't want to look at the social part. The economic greed and the political corruption is high up there because of the emphasis on money, and they don't look at anything else socially. That is why they share the same conception maybe and the stereotypical views about the way they should be handling the poor. They don't mind, and that's why he comes down here and says, this is actually quoted from page 165 to 169, which says, "And where but in the sweat of workers and peasants can you find such fertile fields? For a worker's sweat is the source of all profit." You know, this is very funny, the way one of the thieves in the cave, one of the participants in the cave presents it. They don't look at sparing life, looking at life as a social aspect. They look at life as an economic or a capitalistic aspect. That every person they look at in the country is a source of money, rather than looking at the person as a social person. See, that's why Ngugi bases on this to argue that there is no difference between the former Kenya and today's Kenya. All in all, Ngugi depicts a country in the hands of a wealthy bourgeoisie which is fascinated by Western ways, and therefore it blindly admires and imitates and implements the colonizers' ideas, as well as the customs, the names, and even the language. These are the guys that have dropped their own names and are now much more cherishing the names from the Western side. Even the dressing is totally that of the Western side. This, of course, presents a contrast between what Warenga decides to be putting on and what she decides to put on later in the later versions of the book. You see that the communicator describes her as being extremely more beautiful when she puts on the way Africans should, putting on a kitengi rather than putting on the minis that she had always put on and then painting her lips. So this is a contrast, but it is representing an idea that most of the rich people in Kenya have resorted to mimicking what the whites have presented to them. In the same way, about colonialism still, or neocolonialism, we can say that Ngugi wa Thiong'o, by presentation of the thieves in the cave and how they appear, we can say that Ngugi is trying to depict the theory of Homi Baba, the concept about mimicry. Mimicry is a situation where someone does almost exactly what you do or appears exactly the way you are. So in the depiction of the westernized and thus the way the appearance of the Africans in the cave, the African bourgeoisies, which seems to be recalling the theory by Homi Baba. This concept of mimicry, according to him, says that the mimicry concept is a situation whereby the subjects of the colonized, the subjects of the colonizer become almost the same as the colonizer. So the way you see the whites that the subjects of the whites, us, people that he colonized, would look exactly almost the same as them, meaning that in the behavior, in everything that we eat, whatever we associate with, whatever way that we do things, we will do almost the same as the whites. Now, Ngugi seems to be presenting these guys, the way they adopt the Western behavior, the customs, and especially modes of speech, then also their appearance, how they appear awkward when they try to mimic how the whites speak, and then also how they appear awkward when they try to do what the whites do. Here you can be talking about people like Kidutu Wakatanguro, the snobby life that they want to be in. They look totally physically ugly. And then we can also talk about the examples like the Western way of organizing Gaturia's party, Gaturia and Wangari's party, when they are coming to visit their father at home. It is also totally a mockery of how the whites present their own things. The use of invitation cards, it is not African at all. It is something that the whites have tried to enforce into the blacks, and that is what we're talking about as neocolonialism. Inviting people by cards and then directing them on how they should dress, and worst of it all, where they should be buying the clothes to put on from, the particular shops they should be buying the clothes from, is totally a kind of mimicry that Professor Homi presents, and that is, I think, what Ngugi tries to present here. It is important to note that to Gaturia, however, our Gaturias of today, this is something that they do not appreciate at all. Such mimicry is the epping of Western manners is a shameful aspect, especially on the Kenyans, and that's what he says down here, that there is nothing as terrible as a people who have swallowed foreign customs whole without even chewing them. For such people become mere parrots, and this is what Ngugi wa Thiong'o in this case hates most. Look at the way the wedding ceremony is presented. It establishes a social and economic distinction between the rich and the poor, and that means that at this moment we should be handling the theme of elitism. But most importantly, for us to make a conclusion on the theme of neocolonialism, in Devon across, Ngugi intends in as much as possible to reflect the plight of the post-colonial Kenyan society, as well as the manifestations of the inherited colonial characteristics and way of behavior. And in one way or the other, trying to say that there is no difference between the nation of Kenya, the Kenyan nation during colonialism and after colonialism. For all these characteristics, the characteristics that are coming from the elites are actually copied from the Western world. So there is no difference at all. Okay, in as far as elitism is concerned, I think we should be moving on to what it is. Elitism, we can have as a number of synonyms, which would include exclusiveness, exclusivity, superiority, selectiveness, snobbery, that kind of classism. So maybe you can summarize it as classism, a situation where there are two groups or more groups of people that look at themselves as being totally distinct, different from each other. In this case, we're looking at the way the rich people present themselves, especially to the poor. They look at the poor as people that are vulnerable, and I wouldn't want to associate with them at all. In Devon across, the presentation and the description of the elites represents an important and illuminating method of class analysis, or classism, or elitism. According to Ngugi wa Thiong'o, the effect of colonial power in Africa was particularly to create the elite, the rich people who are different, who look at themselves as being different in terms of style, how they took the tongue, how they spoke, and all the characteristics. These are guys that have copied behaviors of the Westerners. Devil on the Cross presents a Kenyan society in a particular in a particular way that Africans seemed to have copied things from from the whites. So Kenya in this case is representing the rest of Africa. The novel explores the destructive effects of capitalism and neo-colonialism, but using the classes that people have particularly created between the rich and the poor. Now, the areas that we have to look at when are presenting, especially about classism or selectiveness, are this. These people, the black people that are so rich, have become puppets of whites in all ways, in lifestyle, the way they present their parties, the way they dress, and also in the behavior, in the way they speak, the way they act, the way they do everything is totally whites. The wealth also and the obesity and the flamboyance that they feel around them is also something to look at. These are guys that are totally rich, and the riches have influenced their way of behavior, totally just like that of the whites. You will have the examples of Gitutu and Katangura and all those guys that are presenting in the game actually are part and parcel. The betrayal on the side of fellow blacks is also something that we have to analyze. These are people who will stop at nothing. If there is wealth, they will kill even fellow Kenyans. Talk about Kimenderi, who employs, for example, Mwaura to murder innocent people that are fighting for independence during the Mau Mau rebellion, during the times of Harambee. And then during this time, the novel actually also participates in the killing of mimicry. So they will stop at anything but to kill any person who is going to stand in their way of wealth. They are also ruthless, they are greedy, they are materialistic and exploitative. And these actually, when they combine, they form their flag. They don't speak about anything else but to get money, material, and they must exploit. Then they are also murderous and also malicious. They have very malicious ambitions. You see how they kill mimicry, how Mwaura also executes people because they are not able to produce the 5 shillings that is supposed to be their transport fare. It is all these things that they will always have to kill people if at all they're standing in their way of life. We're talking about elitism. They look at the people that are below them as simple things. And this gives a reason as to why Kimenderi suggests they would wire up a fence that would be squeezing blood and sweat out of the people, out of the peasants, and then send it abroad still via pipes. And then that would be processed and brought back. This is a very funny thing, very sad. Then they are also the worshippers of money. And of course, this is actually a conclusion of all this. Because whatever they do, they are trying to bring money. Now, they look at themselves as a group that has to belong to each other, not to belong to the poor. That's what you can look at as elitism or classism or selectiveness. Okay, so simply that's what we can talk about. In case you've seen this as our first video, please just go back to our YouTube channel, Learn English Language and Literature, subscribe and watch any other videos that are there, and you'll not miss any other video that comes up here. I just love you and please stay tuned.